A 500% tariff on every good, every service. On any import coming from a country that is still buying fossil fuels from Putin's Russia. You're probably thinking, yup, that sounds like classic Trump. But no, plot twist, it's not. This is an actual bill in the US Senate, backed by two guys who agree on basically nothing, except that Putin sucks. One is Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina. The other, Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut. And all of this is not some fringe fantasy, it's getting serious traction. As of now, 81 out of 100 senators support it. That's about as bipartisan as it gets in American politics. So what does this bill actually do? Well, it's basically a political sledgehammer. Besides a bunch of direct sanctions on Russia, like banning financial deals with Russian banks and companies, the bill also takes it a step further, with secondary tariffs. Any country that knowingly buys, sells, supplies, or transfers Russian energy, such as oil, gas, uranium, petrol, you name it, gets hit with a 500% tariff on everything they export to the US. In other words, any nation on Earth that consumes or deals with Russian energy gets tariffed. And these tariffs would then stay in place until Russia enters into a peace agreement with Ukraine, the proposal says. According to the senators behind it, this is mostly aimed at one country in particular, China. Because while Western countries try to ditch Russian oil, China's been buying the cheap leftovers. Plus, Russia has been using something called the Shadow Fleet, a murky network of untraceable tankers sneaking fossil fuels across oceans. But this bill doesn't just hit China, it also creates a massive problem for us, here in Europe. Half of the EU is still very much addicted to Russian energy. Even after 3 years of war, sanctions, and fiery speeches about energy independence, the EU still spent 23 billion euros on Russian fossil fuels last year alone. Today, 5 coastal states, France, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Portugal, are still letting in Russian liquefied natural gas, or LNG. In fact, they even bought more last year, up 9%. Meanwhile, Italy, Greece, Hungary, Slovakia, and Bulgaria still get pipeline gas straight from Russia. You know, the old way, pumped across the continent in pipelines. And it's not just gas. Hungary and Slovakia still take Russian oil via the Druzhba pipeline. That's the one Budapest insisted stay open, and the EU agreed. So it's basically sanctions exempt forever. And there's more. 5 countries, Hungary, Slovakia, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, and Finland, run Russian-built nuclear reactors. And yes, those need Russian-made fuel to keep going. So yes, as you can see, a big chunk of Europe is very much still plugged in. If this bill passes and gets applied the way it's written, which to be fair is far from guaranteed, up to 12 EU countries could get slapped with a brutal 500% tariff when they try to sell stuff to the US. And yes, these countries export a lot to America. And with that kind of tariff, their exports wouldn't just take a hit, they'd basically get deleted. This is a big ouch for Italy, France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. On the services side, the EU exports 319 billion euros worth of services to the US. A major chunk of that would be at risk too. Now, the European Commission actually already had a plan. There's a roadmap to phase out all Russian energy by the end of 2027. But it's still just a roadmap in the early stage. And countries like Hungary and Slovakia are already pushing back, saying it will kill competitiveness. So, that being said, is this bill any good? Well, it depends who you ask. On the one hand, it's seen as a strong move to finally tighten the screws on Putin, something that Trump has refused to do so far. On the other hand, this could be an economic and diplomatic nuke, blowing up the ongoing trade talks with Europe and wrecking industries that rely on US markets. But the draft law also includes a little escape hatch. The US president can hand out a 180-day exemption from the tariff to any country, any product, as long as it's in line with national security interest. Who decides that? The president, of course, alone. This would give individual member states a chance to visit the Oval Office and ask Trump for a special, beautiful opt-out deal, a ritual that Trump appears to enjoy, particularly when there are cameras present. But of course, this could undermine EU unity and make the whole thing even more complex. Here's my opinion. It's so frustrating that we're still importing this much energy from Russia. 3 years into the war, and we're still basically paying Putin's bills. So maybe this is the wake-up call Europe needs. And who knows, this kind of economic pain, if it spreads, if China joins, maybe India, it could finally force Russia to the negotiation table. Therefore, I think it's a great initiative in the US Senate. I just wish the EU was more ready for it. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want to support us further, consider joining us on Patreon and vote on video ideas every week. Thank you to our presidents, Jan Schauke, Christian Peter, HEVD, Unite Europe, Stefan, and Mr. Probot.